Oh, you thought Canadian provincial drama was boring? Think again. We've got Saskatchewan shipping their potash through Washington state, David Eby practically vibrating with rage, and enough passive-aggressive political shade to fill the entire Columbia River. Welcome back to Canadian Insights, where we bring you the juiciest political beef this side of the 49th parallel, and folks, this one's got everything: billion-dollar deals, Donald Trump cameos, and a BC premier who apparently found out he was excluded from pipeline talks the same way you find out your ex got engaged, through social media. Buckle up, because this potash export saga is spicier than you'd think fertilizer could ever be. So here's the tea. Nutrien Ltd, Saskatchewan's fertilizer giant and one of the world's largest potash producers, just dropped a billion-dollar bombshell. They are building their shiny new potash export terminal in Longview, Washington. Not Prince Rupert. Not Vancouver. Washington State. As in, literally across the border in the United States. And David Eby? His gut feelings. Big feelings. The kind of feelings you have when your neighbor builds their dream deck while you're still waiting on a building permit. Now, before we dive into Eby's emotional journey, let's talk about what potash actually is, because I know half of you just Googled it. Potash is basically fertilizer gold. It's a potassium-rich mineral that makes crops grow like they're on steroids, legally. Saskatchewan sits on massive reserves of the stuff, making Canada one of the world's top producers. We're talking billions in export value. So when a Saskatchewan company decides where to ship this agricultural treasure, it's kind of a big deal. It's like if Canada invented poutine and then decided to exclusively sell it through American food trucks. Offensive, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Nutrien looked at British Columbia's ports, probably took a long, hard look at Prince Rupert with its beautiful coastal views and strategic Pacific access, and then said, "Nah, we're good. We'll take Longview, Washington, thanks." According to Vaughn Palmer's reporting, Nutrien cited a whole host of cost reasons. Translation: BC's ports are apparently so expensive or complicated that shipping through a foreign country makes more financial sense. Let that sink in. It's cheaper and easier to deal with international borders, customs, and American regulations than to use Canadian infrastructure. That's not just a red flag, that's a red banner being flown by a helicopter. Enter David Eby, stage left, looking like someone just told him his hockey team traded their best player for a bag of pucks. On Monday, the BC Premier told reporters he was really disappointed by Nutrien's decision. And honestly, disappointed doesn't quite capture the vibe. This is a man who's watching billions in economic opportunity sail down the Columbia River while BC ports sit there like rejected prom dates. Eby pointed out that the whole country would benefit from investing in West Coast port expansion. He's not wrong. Canada's Pacific Gateway is supposed to be our ticket to Asian markets, our competitive advantage, our economic flex. Instead, we're watching Saskatchewan potash take a detour through Trump country. And speaking of Trump, Eby had some thoughts. He warned that choosing the U.S. location means Saskatchewan potash will be hostage to the whims of President Donald Trump. Remember tariffs? Remember trade wars? Remember when Trump threatened to turn off the taps on various imports faster than you can say America first? Eby's basically saying, congratulations, you just put your billion-dollar investment at the mercy of the most unpredictable president in modern history. He called it the worst of both worlds. You lose the Canadian infrastructure benefits and you gain the constant anxiety of wondering if Trump's going to wake up one morning and decide potash is a national security threat. Because with that guy, everything's a national security threat except actual national security threats. But wait, there's more drama. Because this potash situation is just the appetizer in a full-course meal of Western Canadian political tension. Last week, Eby found out that Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe had been chatting with Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith about an oil pipeline through British Columbia. Casual conversation about infrastructure that goes through your province, no big deal. Except nobody invited Eby to the group chat. Imagine planning a road trip through someone's backyard without telling them. That's essentially what happened here. Eby told the CBC's David Cochrane that he almost fell out of his seat when he heard about these secret pipeline talks. Picture that. The Premier of British Columbia, the province where this pipeline would actually go, finding out about pipeline discussions like he's reading yesterday's newspaper. The irony is absolutely delicious. Saskatchewan and Alberta are having cozy conversations about BC infrastructure without including BC, and then Saskatchewan turns around and chooses Washington state for their potash terminal. It's like your roommates planning a party at your apartment without inviting you, and then deciding to host the after party at someone else's place entirely. Eby's out here feeling like the forgotten middle child of Canadian provinces, and honestly, can you blame him? Here's what this really exposes though. Canada's internal trade barriers and interprovincial politics are so messy that companies are literally looking at foreign countries as easier options. Think about that. The paperwork, the negotiations, the costs of doing business between Canadian provinces are apparently worse than dealing with international borders. It's like if ordering from Toronto to Vancouver required more forms than ordering from Toronto to New York. We're supposed to be one country, but sometimes it feels like we're 10 provinces in a trench coat pretending to get along. And British Columbia? They're sitting on some of the most strategic port infrastructure in North America, with direct access to Asian markets that are hungry for resources. Prince Rupert is closer to Asia than any other North American port. That's a geographic advantage you can't build or buy. Yet somehow, companies are choosing Washington state. Either BC is pricing itself out of competition, or the regulatory environment is so Byzantine that businesses would rather deal with a foreign government. Neither option is great, folks. So where does this leave us? David Eby's disappointed, Saskatchewan's potash is headed south, and Canadian interprovincial cooperation looks about as functional as a hockey team where nobody passes the puck. This isn't just about $1 billion facility. It's about whether Canada can get its act together enough to keep major investments within its own borders. It's about whether our provinces can work together or if we're destined to keep losing opportunities to American states who somehow make doing business easier than dealing with our own backyard. What do you think? Is BC dropping the ball on making itself competitive? Or is Saskatchewan selling out Canadian interests by going American? Drop your takes in the comments, because I guarantee you this debate is just getting started. And hey, if you want to stay on top of all the political drama, chaos, and occasional sanity in Canadian politics, smash that subscribe button. We post multiple videos daily here at Canadian Insights, bringing you the stories that matter and the shade that entertains. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next chapter in Canada's never-ending provincial drama series. Until next time, stay informed, stay skeptical, and maybe check if your province is being left out of important conversations. Peace.